Dhamma is very subtle and refined, and when it is brought out and proclaimed by chanting or recitation, it is bound to resonate throughout the worlds, to let everyone hear it who is able to hear it in the whole Lokatatu. An Arahant comes to reveal Dhamma. The Acharya was staying in a cave and late at night while it was very quiet, and as he was practicing Samadhi Bhavana, an Arahant whose name was Venerable Pagula, who was tall, light-complexioned, beautiful, and such as would inspire faith in those who saw him, used to come through the air to visit him by the way of Samadhi Bhavana. One day the Acharya had lost something and had been quite unable to find it. That evening, as soon as he had sat to do his meditation practice, the Arahant came through the air to visit him. As soon as he had descended and sat down, he immediately said, "I believe you lost something of yours earlier in the day. Is this not so?" The Acharya said that it was so. The Arahant then pointed and said, "It is over there. It's not lost. You just forgot where you put it." The next morning, he went and had a look, and found the article where the Arahant had indicated. The Acharya was quite surprised at this, for he had not made a plea for help, nor said anything about it at all. "So how did the Arahant know about it? For I found it in the exact spot that he had indicated, which is remarkable." While visiting the Acharya, the Arahant expressed his admiration for the way in which he kept up the Todanga observances, and he praised him highly for his behavior and practice, which were good and true, and it was this that inspired him to come and visit the Acharya. Then the Arahant taught and revealed Dhamma to arouse joyfulness in the Acharya, and he taught him to be firm and unrelenting in the maintenance of the Todanga observances. "You must always keep up your practice of the Todangas, so that they become firm and strong, and you must never let them deteriorate. The deterioration of the practice of the Todangas is equal to the deterioration of the religion, sasana, for even though all the books of Dhamma may still be available, they are not likely to be of real value to people who are not able to become interested in them in the way they should. The Todanga duties are very high forms of Dhamma, and anyone who is able to stick to the practice of them is bound to have an exalted citta. You should know that all the noble Arya of all classes originated from these Todanga duties, because all of them are methods of Dhamma which can destroy all the various types of kilesas. Thus it is that the Todanga duties are the path to go along for the Arya Dhamma and the Arya person, Buggala. But those who keep no Todanga observances, in fact, keep no practical observances at all. They are like an empty village, an empty town, which, however fine it may be, is not attractive when it is empty. So you must keep up the Todangas, the destroyers of the kilesas. You must always look after them and make them good and strong. Don't let the story of your life be vain and barren, so that it becomes a channel for the path, fruition, and nibbana to leak out and trickle away. For the path, fruition, and nibbana are what you should reach and attain. All the Buddhas and Savakas and all others who have reached the final excellence maintained and upheld the Todanga observances. But those who are careless and think that they are unimportant lose that which is essential and important within them. So you must always guard that which is important within you by means of the Todanga observances. One who is possessed of the Todanga observances has a strange, subtle power and authority, both outwardly and inwardly, of a kind which is quite charming and hard to explain. Such a person stands out in all the Deva realms throughout the universe, and both people and Devatas of all classes praise and respect one who is endowed with the Todanga observances, and he never causes any harm either to himself or others wherever he goes, for he is always peaceful and calm in himself. The Todanga duties are subtle Dhammas, and it is difficult to appreciate their importance, even though they have always been important Dhammas in Buddhism right from the beginning. For the Todanga observances are a major principle of Buddhism, and those who have the Todangas as inherent characteristics within them, who know what is important within them, and to guard well that set of conditions which is within themselves, which is important, are worthy of our heartfelt admiration and praise. Those who are well possessed of the Tūtanga observances will have hearts full of metta and kindness for all beings, and while there are still people who practice and maintain the Tūtanga observances, Buddhism will still be flourishing and giving results in that place, because the Tūtangas are the way of bringing the path and fruition of all levels flowing towards them, and there is no place, time, or anything else that can act as an obstacle barring the way to the path, fruition, and nibbana, as long as the Tūtanga observances are kept up by all who practice the way. You should take good note of all this concerning the Tūtanga observances, so that it gets into your heart, and think about it, and contemplate it, so that it reaches Dhamma. Then, wherever you stay, wherever you go, peace and happiness will be with you in yourself, for these Tūtanga observances are the source from which all Dhamma arises. As soon as he had finished, this Arahant said farewell to the Acharya, and then flew into the air and disappeared. After the visitor had gone, the Acharya thought over and thoroughly examined what the Arahant had revealed and taught him. He became overwhelmed with wonder, for he had never even dreamed that an exalted Arahant who had reached Nibbana already should make a special effort and come with metta to teach him about the Tūtanga observances and many other aspects of Dhamma. He became very confident in all aspects of Dhamma, and felt sure that he had not wasted the opportunity of being born as a human being, and he was full of praise for the supremely wise being who had come with metta to teach him, for it was one of the Kirnasawa who came through the air to him. I have probably got some vasana parami, accumulated tendencies of perfection, which enabled me to see things which are normally not visible, and to hear things which were completely unexpected, things which I never even dreamed I would hear or see since the day I was born. My practice of the way is probably not worthless in the sphere of Buddhism, for otherwise why should an exalted Arahant waste his time coming here through the air to favor me with metta? Later that night, when he had come out of the place where he had been doing his meditation practice to walk Jangama, he felt as if his body would float up into the sky until he could follow the way the Arahant went. In striving to practice the way, he did not feel tired nor stiff and sore anywhere, and it seemed as if the path, fruition, and nibbana had come within arm's reach, even though in fact there were still kilesas in his heart. His citta was calm and peaceful, his body was light, and wherever he looked everything appeared free from danger, clear and open. It seemed that nowhere were there any things or emotionally disturbing objects coming into association with the heart and getting entangled with it, to disturb it and make trouble for it, always acting as a demonic influence, Mara, as they had always done in the past. He went on walking Jangama until the dawn came, without feeling in the least tired or stiff. He told me that a Dhamma saying which he had known before, Dhamma piti sukhang seti, one who has joyful enthusiasm, piti, in Dhamma, lives and sleeps happily, occurred to him and became absolutely clear and obvious to him that night. On hearing this, the writer felt as if his hair stood on end due to joyful enthusiasm, and being so glad in hearing of the experiences of the Venerable Ajaan, who had the Vasana Bharami to develop the way of Dhamma until he saw the path and fruition right there before him. For outwardly a supreme Arahant flew down to favor him with metta, and inwardly he drank of the Dhamma, the taste of which seemed to spread throughout the body and heart, the taste of a rare and indescribable peace. Such as this cannot be found anywhere in the world, in the sky, far, near, or anywhere else, except only in the effort and striving to practice and train oneself in the way of Dhamma. But those who really try and strive in this way are likely to gain such experience one day, because that which brings about such experience are within Dhamma, and Dhamma is in the heart, and is never separated from it, nor ever goes to stay elsewhere. It seems probable that this Acharya will have the strangest biography of all Venerable Ajaan Mun's disciples, for he encountered so many unusual things. Most of them involved hardship, difficulties, and lack of normal requisites, as well as encounters with wild animals and tigers, which meant putting his life at risk, life which the world cherishes and looks after more than anything else. The results which came from this were like jewels, decorating and enriching the heart both outwardly and inwardly. Outwardly means that he saw and heard mysterious, subtle things, which were beyond the capacity of the ordinary person to know, see, and hear. For he continually saw such things which went hand in hand with his practice of Dhamma right from the beginning, whereas inwardly means that the taste of Dhamma was always present in the heart. Going on from here, the reader will be able to use his imagination in following the stories of this Acharya, which we will continue to relate. The Venerable Ajaan was striving for the way of Dhamma while living in a cave in a hillside, and it seems that he was staying much farther from any village than he ever had in the past. It took him more than 2 hours to walk on Paṭipadā every day and return, and by the time he got back he was covered with sweat. But he was quite contented to do this, and he willingly accepted the conditions, without any thought of the difficulties and lack of amenities, for his meditation practice was absorbing, and never boring and insipid. Then, one night, not long after his chitta became calm and went down, there appeared before him an arahant coming towards him through the air, until he came right up in front of him, and then slowly came down, almost as if he had brakes. He came right down until he reached the ground, ever so gently, and then sat down in front of him in the most seemly manner. His name was Venerable Paṭipadā. He was smiling, while his whole countenance was full of radiant brightness, and his expression and bearing displayed the mild gentleness of metta. It was as if he were a doctor who was full of concern and thoughtfulness for a sick patient, asking how he was feeling and anxious to help with various medicines and other methods to the best of his ability. Such was the manner of this arahant. As soon as he had sat down, his whole bearing displayed metta and a willingness to assist the Acharya in Dhamma, and he asked quietly, "How is it between the 5 khandhas in the heart, which is the owner of your round of birth and death, Vatta? Are they going all right? Is your chitta able to see well enough the banefulness of birth and death, and is it wearied of them yet? I feel anxious for you, and I am afraid, lest your chitta, which has been in the habit of lying asleep without waking up for endless ages, will not be interested enough to want to wake up sufficiently to see the way to go on to Nibbana, for this is a mysterious realm for worldly beings who are not interested in waking out of their sleep. This sleep which is their deluded, engrossed absorption in all things which deceive them, which are always there in the realms of worldly beings who delight in their infatuations much more than they delight in knowing and seeing the whole truth, which is there to be found in those same realms. This is why I came, and now that I am here I would like to praise, Anumodana, you, for the strength of your faith and the intensity of the practice which you are doing at present." These were the first few words of greeting spoken by the Arahant to the Acharya, out of concern and with metta for him. As for the Acharya, it seemed to him in this meditation vision, bhavana nimitta, as if he actually got up and then prostrated to the Arahant and greeted him with a full felt heart, even though his heart was still in samadhi. In reply to the first question of the Arahant after he had come down out of the sky, he said in connection with his samadhi meditation that, "I can put up with the khandhas all right, in the way that people in the world have to put up with them, but when it comes to the chitta, I am still trying to strive and scramble up so as to see how bad and harmful it is to be self-forgetful, and to get involved in all sorts of things which are inwardly troublesome, and which lay in wait to deceive me, always causing me to fall into delusion, and thus to get some peace and see the banefulness of the round, Vatta, of samsara, as far as my mindfulness and wisdom are able." When the Acharya had finished speaking, the Arahant started to reveal Dhamma to him with special emphasis on the Dhutanga observances, in much the same way as the previous Arahant, finally ending with some explanations of the Vinaya. The gist of the Dhamma which this Arahant revealed to him was based upon the Thutanga observances which the Acharya was correctly practicing. Thus, the practices which you are doing at present are the right way to act. Samijigamma. The Lord Buddha and all the Savakas, who were the most wonderful people, used to like living in the lonely forests, in caves, under overhanging cliffs, under the shade of a tree, and in dense jungle, or in charnel grounds, where there are always things to remind one of death. For every day the local people come to dispose of their dead bodies, bodies of women and men, brothers and sisters, children and old people, all the time. Now you are staying here, searching with mindfulness and wisdom into such things that happen, things which are there all the time, so that mindfulness and wisdom shall have a way to rouse yourself up to search for a way out. The bhikkhus of old lived in the way that you are living and acting right now, so the way you are living is right, as it should be, and not scattered and disturbed by things that increase the suffering of the round of samsara, the vata dukkha, so that it accumulates in the heart until one cannot find anywhere to lay down the load. But in fact, beings in the world hardly ever think of laying down the load. Rather do they think, each in their own way, of accumulation and development, so that suffering and its causes increase until it becomes immense suffering, mahanta dukkha. Therefore the birth and death of beings in the world goes on taking place everywhere on earth, and nowhere can one find anything more prevalent than the charnel grounds of beings who are intent on birth and death. Even the whole of this place where we are now sitting down is the charnel ground of various kinds of life. Nowhere is there a vacant space which we can say is not a charnel ground of beings, and even your own body is a charnel ground. So when there is nothing but the birth and death of beings in this way everywhere, where can we find any peace and comfort? Have you yet examined and seen how even your own body is a charnel ground, where various kinds of beings are born and die, in a similar way to those which are external? If you have not yet examined this, it means that your wisdom is still not circumspect enough to make you frightened of samsara, the vata, so that you look for a way out, and so that it will no longer come to trouble you and lead you on to be born and to die time after time, endlessly, which is a most vexatious and woeful thing in the eyes of all those who are the wisest of men. Wisdom means the skill and ability of the heart alone, which must penetrate into everything without making an exception for anything, even to pebbles and grains of sand, which are nothing but relative conventional things, sammati, that can also cause one to become involved and caught up in attachments. The wisest of men therefore examine them all and uproot them, until there are none left at all. You are one of those in the circle of Thutanga bhikkhus whose heart is firmly intent on attaining the realm which is free from suffering, and you are practicing in the well-established way of the highest of the noble ones, the Arya Puggala. So you should use mindfulness and wisdom in the same manner that they used them. Then you will be doing what is correct and in line with the original intention of the Thutanga observances. For these observances were originally established for the purpose of promoting the mindfulness and wisdom of those who use them, and also for the purpose of arousing their skillful ability to know thoroughly every aspect of everything with which they come into contact, and for the purpose of being able to uproot and get rid of them one by one. This is to be done not merely by looking at these Thutanga observances in an idle, passive way without knowing what they are for, but by knowing their purpose and seeing what kilesas and evil states of mind each of the Thutanga practices is aimed at curing, and also knowing what benefits they bestow on those who practice them variously in the proper way. For in truth, each of the Thutangas has its purpose in curing or pulling out and getting rid of the kilesas within oneself, root and all. For whatever types of kilesas are to be found in the hearts of those living in the world, these Thutangas are capable of uprooting them completely, provided that the one who practices has the ability to know the purpose of the Thutangas thoroughly and correctly. For these Thutangas have been the means of purifying very large numbers of ordinary people and turning them into wonderful and special people. The way in which you are practicing at present is praiseworthy. But this additional explanation is given so as to act as a boost to your mindfulness and wisdom, to make them go on increasing and growing more and more. For this is appropriate to the Tuotangas, which are the means of refining people to make them become steadily more and more clever and sharp-witted, not merely being attached to the words and the idea of upholding the Tuotangas by rote, which is just stupidity and complacency, and not thinking of going the way of wisdom to search for skill and cleverness to imbue oneself with. Each Tuotanga has a very subtle meaning which is difficult to know in all its aspects. Therefore, you should use mindfulness and wisdom to examine and reflect upon each of them, one by one, in fine and subtle detail. By this you will gain immeasurable value from the Tuotangas. Even the ultimate attainment of the freedom, vimutti, of Nibbana is not beyond the scope of these same Tuotangas when acting as the agents of one's development in Dhamma. All of the Supreme Ones cherish these forms of Dhamma very much, and they entrust their lives and chittas to them. They also admire and commend those who are interested enough to practice the Tuotangas and say that such a person will gain what is valuable, leading him to completion and enlightenment without running into obstacles. He will also be able to maintain the tradition of the Aryas, because this is the tradition of the Aryas, the tradition which they have practiced in every age and period. This is true not only of the religion of the Lord Buddha who attained enlightenment in this age, for in whatever age and place an enlightened Buddha arises, the Tuotanga observances which are always a pair with the religion are always bound to be there. You should not think that these Tuotanga observances are only there in the religion of one of the Buddhas, for they have always been there in the religion of every one of the Buddhas, right up to the Buddhist religion of the present day. Each of the Buddhas, who became enlightened in the essence of purity, which is completely free from all the kilesas, are bound to teach and introduce the Tuotanga observances to the bhikkhus who are his followers, in the same way in every sasana, because the Tuotanga observances are the most suitable form of practice for those who are ordained, and those who have a heartfelt anxiety that they must attain freedom will be able to do so with the firm determination to filter out and remove the kilesas from their hearts. This happens immediately once the causes are produced, without delay and without having to wait a long time for the results.